Hello, welcome back to Fool of a Took podcast. We have a very, very special episode for you today. This is a bit of a bonus episode for our season 2 premiere. We are here today to talk about The Fellowship of the Ring, the film by Peter Jackson, and how it kind of compares to the novel The Fellowship of the Ring by J.R.R. Tolkien. Two masters at their crafts, creating work for us to digest and analyze on a podcast. So I'm very thankful that they made that just so we could do this.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Very kind.
They did it. I asked them to do it, and they did it, and now we're here. So it was nice. Thanks, guys. So if you're listening to this episode right now, which is episode 24 of Fool of a Took, if you have not gone and listened to episode 23, which is the first chapter of The Two Towers, the book, we do recommend you go back and listen to it. There are going to be some spoilers in this episode that touch on the beginning of The Two Towers. So this is not a spoiler-free episode. We try to be very spoiler-free most of the time. This is not a spoiler-free episode. We're going to spoil some shit.
This is all the spoils.
Yes.
Very spoiled.
We're going to talk about the beginning of The Two Towers, which is
spoiled
included.
brats.
Brat. I love it. I love that word. Make sure you go back to episode 23, which is the departure of Boromir, which is from The Two Towers. So now I've said what I need to say, business and, secretary shit done. Now let's dig into it, huh?
Yay. Yeah, I can't wait.
This is going to be a good one.
All right, so I'm going to summarize the entire film.
Word for word.
Yep. With hand puppets.
Oh my God.
No,
That'd be epic.
that is a task that is beyond me. But no, really though, I think that it's important to kind of acknowledge that this episode, the structure is going to be different, right? Because normally, we have our intro, we have our recap, we have a summary, then we have a discussion and treat, and it's all very fun. This will still be very fun, but that's all for when we've read something. And we didn't read anything. We watched a thing. So I no longer understand the program, and I don't know what to expect.
What do I do with my hands?
I'm a little scared, but very excited.
This is going to be all discussion. This is a fun all discussion episode. So if you are listening to this podcast because you're expecting Pat to give a nice hour-long summary, I'm sorry, that is not this episode.
Not this week.
You're just going to have to listen to us ramble on.
Well, most of us.
Okay, so I guess the first place to start is with first impressions, right? Because I know it's a first for me even doing like a critical read of The Fellowship of the Ring, and then chapter 1 of The Two Towers, and then watching The Fellowship of the Ring. I've seen this movie so many times. I don't even know how many. The only thing I've seen more than that is Star Wars. When you are reintroduced to everything, you notice things. And I think that there were creative choices that were made that were great. There were some that, they were necessary. They did a lot with characters. They did a lot of things. But I'm curious as to what your guys' first impressions were coming out of that film.
Yeah.
The last time I saw it was easily 10 years ago. So memory on that's not so great. But watching it after reading the book, I feel like the last time I watched this, how on earth did I know anything that was going on? Whatever they meant to tell us in that movie, I missed 95% of it because I hadn't read the book, and it cleared it up so much.
I mean, for me, it's crazy because I had read the book before I watched the film the first time as well. And I've seen the film so many times, countless times. But this time, after doing a deep dive critical read through, I was really struck by how many scenes or moments or characters affected me almost completely the opposite from when I just read it. And my imagination gave me what they look like.
Yeah. I kind of agree with Laura that I've seen this so many times and I love the movies. I've seen all of them so many times. I owned them on VHS, and then I owned them on DVD, and then I owned them on Blu-ray, and now I own them on 4K Blu-ray and extended versions. And that was my first time watching the extended versions ever. I always had the theatrical cuts, I think, because there was a good 45 minutes of things I had never seen before, and I was like a little school kid next to you guys when something would come up, and I was like, that's dude, that's not in the one I saw before. And you guys were like, yeah. And I was like, well, I've never seen this. which was really fun for me. I have a question for everybody. What is your memory of seeing the Fellowship of the Ring for the first time? And when was it? Tell me about it.
The first time I saw the movie was actually a midnight release at the movie theater with my father. He dressed up as Gandalf. I was a random hobbit. Everyone there was like either dressed up or wearing like Lord of the Rings like fan made shirts because it wasn't cool and there were no t-shirts yet. And I just remember the excitement of like standing in line outside in our like cloaks and just waiting to get in. And then like everyone rushing up, and that was before you signed your seats. You just kind of fight to get as close to the front as you could. And I got to stay up super late on the weekend. I was 11 years old. And it was just such an epic thing I shared with my dad. He would introduce me.
That was for Fellowship?
Yeah, that was for Fellowship of the Ring.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Are you sure?
Yeah. 2001.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess so, yeah.
Yeah, that movie's old enough to drink and then some.
Yeah.
I saw it, I don't know how many times in theaters when it came out. But I distinctly remember one of the last times when it was in its original theatrical release was we went to a mall theater in the middle of the day, and there were only like 8 people in the theater, and I was with 4 of them. And then they were like, it was amazing to see the whole thing basically with no one else there. It was like a private viewing of this like landmark to me film. Because when they announced they were making these movies, I was like through the roof. Because also that's around the same time they were talking about doing the re-releases of the original Star Wars trilogies, and then the prequels came out and all this stuff. So like I was like, that time was amazing for so many things. And I drank it all in.
Yeah.
And it, like the music, the casting, the visuals, like all of these
You
things.
were 17, 16 at this point?
Christ. 2001, I was 16.
16, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good age to be having like all your favorite things become movies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
It's fucking rad.
I saw it at the King of Prussia Mall. My buddy Martel and I went, and I had not read the books. Obviously, I'm reading it now. And I didn't know that The Lord of the Rings was a thing at all. I knew what The Hobbit was because I grew up watching the animated Hobbit, and I had seen the animated Lord of the Rings movie, but in my head it was just like the not as fun version of I like the Hobbit one.
The sequel.
I watched the animated Hobbit over and over and over and over and over. And then it was like, oh, there's the Lord of the Rings. It's just another story in this world with these fun animated characters. And I watched that one and I was like, I don't know, it's okay. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It's fine. And when it came out, I went to the theater with Martel and we watched it. And I walked out of the theater. My dad picked me up and I got in the car and he was like, how was it? And he was so excited to hear. And I said, it was okay. And he was like, really? You know, I'm like 13.
Your dad's a huge fan, right?
My dad's a huge fan of Lord of the Rings. And he's read all the books and he's seen all the movies. And he was like, really? And I was like, yeah, there's just a really bad ending. You know? Like, it just kind of stopped. Everybody just kind of got mad at each other and then a bunch of people like died and I guess they returned the ring. So like Frodo and Sam just walk off on their own towards the mountain. And I guess that's how
the story ends, right?
I guess that's how the story ends. I'm assuming it's implied that they destroyed the ring or something. And he was like, he looked at me with like such disappointment.
That only a father can provide.
It's like there's multiple movies, Chris. I was like, oh, well that makes sense because nothing was resolved at all, and I didn't know what was going on the entire time.
I don't remember the first time I saw it. I think it just sort of like entered our collective consciousness as a cultural thing. And, you know, I saw it on the TV. I saw it here and there. I'd probably seen it through at some point. I feel like we may have done the trilogy once. I know I did it with, I know I watched it with our friend Doug.
I know me and Doug did it. Did it a couple times. It was while I was with Pat.
I was not there.
Pat wasn't there. He was working. I think we watched 2 of the extended editions back to back.
8 hours?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
What else do you do on New Year's Day?
That's awesome.
I didn't realize that. I feel like I failed you.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
That is interesting that you bring that up because I would have assumed that you would have been like, well, now it's time for our annual watch.
Right.
I feel like we may have done that at some point. It just kind of escapes me.
I try not to force things on people, right? Because I want people to discover stuff in their own time, in their own way, especially when it's, I think, as important as Lord of the Rings is to me. A thing that you guys had both said was that like, oh my God, I didn't understand any of this the first time I watched it through, and now you have all this depth and understanding. Like that movie it follows the iceberg model, where you get about 10%, and the other 90% is hidden below
That's
the
what
water.
it felt like.
Right? So like now you have all this background that doesn't appear. You have all these, you know what's going on with the things that you are being shown but not told.
It does feel a bit like a hammock. And you just like sit in it and it just like carries you through. And it's just sort of like, it's going to go to its own pace and you're just there for it. You're surrendering to the movie.
Being perfectly honest, that is how I had consumed that film prior to that.
In a hammock? With Doug?
As a ham, oh my God.
I knew that was coming.
Basically just taking it in and like very, very vague recollection of the plot. No details. Couldn't tell you any details. I could just tell you it's a very pretty film. You know? Just sort of experiencing it.
Yeah, beautiful. It's a beautiful movie. Like the visuals are so captivating.
Oh, yeah.
I thought it was really cool that the extended edition is on, especially on 4K and they're big files, it's on 2 discs, right? And I'm a physical media guy. I love physical media. So I have it on Blu-ray. Disc 1 is book 1. Disc 2 is book 2.
That was a really nice nod.
And it was a nice touch. Like, okay, cool. When you put disc 2 in, it kicks off with the ring goes south scene. So that was a nice little touch there. Peter Jackson sort of honoring the format of the novel compared to how a movie traditionally would be formatted.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think the biggest thing that I noticed right off the bat here is the approach to the story is flipped on its head when Peter Jackson gets his hands on it. He is a character director. He loves directing character. The world was not very important to him as he created the movie because there's zero description, context, or understanding as to where our characters are at any given moment, why they're there, or how long they're there.
Doesn't have time.
Doesn't have time. And he's like, he knows it. He doesn't care about it. He's like, that's irrelevant.
Yeah.
All that matters is our characters. And when I'm not, and I think the biggest thing that really stands out, honestly, to me when I was watching that was like in the book, you had that whole like, whatever it was, 18-year gap or something between 17 year. And like in this, it's that night. It's like, we don't have time to sit around. We got to go. And that was like a big gripe I had with the book, which was that mentality. If you guys remember, I was like, he's got the ring. He's got to go.
Yeah.
And Frodo was like, no.
You are not
I'm
wrong.
going to take my time and I'm going to do things on my terms, which is the Tolkien style. That's how I've, interpreted this book. But Peter Jackson was not into world building, which explains why when we've been reading this book, I didn't know jack shit about where anything was or how far away it was because he never says anything.
That's all real, right?
Yeah.
Because there have to be concessions to presenting this on a film because you cannot present all of this material. This would have been much better as a 10 or 12 hour series.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Right? Like imagine
Like an Amazon series.
Yeah. Or imagine Game of Thrones as a 3-hour a 3-hour movie. It would suck.
Yeah.
They made it as a series. You didn't watch it.
No. I'm not watching it because I like to binge things.
Yeah.
I have patience.
Okay. All good.
Nah. Okay. But the point about world building is that they have to pull some stuff out. And we lost a lot in translation. But they kept the momentum going because they kept that super interesting. Because you remember reading the book, there were parts where you're like, what the fuck? I am so like, this is a drag. It's slow. This is what's happening. But it's all about that slow build, that slow burn. It builds space. It builds time. It builds theme. It builds tension. Whereas the movie's just like, fucking go.
This happened, and then this happened, and then this
We
happened.
got 40 minutes to get to Bree.
Yeah.
And they do it.
The movie felt very staccato. It was just like, here's a scene, here's a scene, here's a scene. They're connected. There's a plot, but it just was like that arch that build that tension wasn't there.
Yeah.
Right, because it's hard to do that with a visual medium, in my opinion, like
Yeah.
the slow burn, like Mad Men, and keep people's interest when you don't have a TV series a length of time. When it's a film, you have to keep it quick paced, especially if someone's never read the book, and you have to make it more about the characters so that you care about what you're watching.
If Tolkien loves a slow burn and a huge map, what Peter Jackson had to do was shrink that down to a postcard and keep the camera about 2.5 inches from your face for 3 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think too, like the book, just the voice of it, you feel like you are looking through the eyes of a hobbit. And it also adds a grandeur to the world and the depth to everything. Even though Frodo sometimes is learning things the first time, it makes you feel small, like he sometimes does, because he's so overwhelmed by the task.
Because you're learning at the same time as him. About
but
all this
the
world.
film, I felt like I was a voyeur, just like kind of watching all these things happen, versus I didn't feel like a part of the story. So you kind of lose some of the grandeur of the world. You kind of just feel like you're watching like someone's memory.
Yeah.
I never
That
felt
was-
in the story. I felt like I was outside watching in the whole time.
That was a really interesting opening to me.
Yeah.
It was such a shock after really forgetting most of the movie, then reading the book, that they just took, there's a little bit of history in this chapter, and there's a little bit of history in this chapter, and they took all of it and they put it into one exposition, which I thought was actually really helpful. But I will say the first couple times I've seen this film, I blanked out during that whole thing.
Right. And that's fair because
It was just so much just like heavy stuff thrown on you all at once. And you're just like,
because the movie literally opens with Galadriel voicing over that fucking rad poem that you love. One ring to rule them all, the whole deal. And then
But it's Galadriel's version.
Yeah, it is a little different. She puts a spin on it. That opening couple of minutes of the film is the last alliance of elves and men. They start at the beginning in the movie in a way the book does not. The
Yeah.
book starts you in the present. The movie starts you in the distant past.
Yeah.
Because that's how they decide to force feed you all this important information. But one of the things that we lose in terms of world building, and I think this is really important, is that you lose the theme of loss in the entire first film. We are constantly talking on the podcast about the threat of decline of the elves, how the world is changing. It's becoming lesser, different, maybe. If you're an elf, the summer of your world is over and you're staring at winter, at Sauron coming at you. And either Sauron wins and you die, or Sauron loses and you leave.
like that
Right.
whole concept is just condensed down to one line in one scene
Exactly.
in Lorien. And that was hard.
Right.
Yeah.
And then we also lose from a straight plot point, beats perspective, world building perspective. We lose the entire Old Forest. They go straight from the party, it feels like, to oops, we bumped into Merry and Pippin in a field somewhere, in a cornfield.
A cornfield.
Which is
Come
awesome.
on.
Well, they have potatoes, so they have New World vegetables.
Yeah.
Then we see Farmer Maggot reduced to a scythe and a scream, which is like
And
not
some
a scream.
dogs barking.
and some dogs. And then we hit the road, and then we go to the ferry, and then we go to Bree, and it takes about
30 seconds.
literally about 4 minutes, and that was chapters of a book.
And
Yeah.
so much like rich detail that came out during those chapters that are just lost.
On the theme of losing a bit of our world building, I think it's important to call out that the world in which we lose some in the movie is like Middle Earth is a character. And that character was turned into an NPC. It was
You're right.
I don't care about this. Nothing fucking matters about Middle Earth in the movie. We're just going, it is just simply a place for our characters to move through.
You don't get the impression that it's much different from the world we live in.
Yes,
It's
exactly.
just like, oh, you're in a forest now. Oh, there's elves in a forest. Like, it's not a magical forest.
Yeah,
It's just elves in a
I think
forest.
the thing that really frustrated me while I watched it this time that never annoyed me before was that when you shrink the world so much to be in a film, and granted, it's a huge book to be in a 3.5 hour movie, even with the extended edition, we lose the context of why our characters must journey through this world, through this map, why they are going to the places that they are going. And those whys really matter. They really matter. And that's not that's not made important in the movies. And that kind of bummed me out quite a bit when I was watching the movie. And because sometimes the distance to a place you talk about like no man's land, right? The distance of land you have to cover before you're safe again can be terrifying in and of itself. And that whole element is removed from the film.
Yeah, the element of scale.
It's completely gone. You know, they are in Moria about as long as Bilbo's birthday party.
That's true.
And then they're
If
out
not
of it.
longer.
Yeah.
You know, it's like these are not the same, right? This is supposed to be days in the
Yeah.
darkness and days of feeling isolated and alone, and you know, even when they go to Lorien, they don't even say they're going to Lorien.
They just say they're there.
They just say they're there.
Yeah.
Which is why every time I've ever watched the movie, I fucking hated the Galadriel scene in my head. Why? There's no reason whatsoever for them to go there because it's not explained. And maybe in some deleted clips in the hard drives, there's an explanation that the character gives of we must get to Lorien. It's a safe haven. There's elves that will protect us, whatever it is. And then Boromir can be a dick about it like he is in the book. Because then I would be like, oh, tension, good, conflict.
Right.
This drives a movie. Conflict drives a movie. But there's no conflict. We lost Gandalf. There's nothing to do. He's like, give him just a minute, boy, or whatever. And he just yells it. And then all of a sudden they're in a golden woods. And Galadriel is all weird. And I was like, what the fuck is going on?
Right. They win a lot more in the film. It's less hard for them to get through different places.
Yeah.
And it kind of seems like they're just like tripping and bumbling into gold a lot of the times. And
Yes.
and it's hard to like, I'm not trying to be critical because I do love the film for what it is. And I think it's a masterpiece. But after reading the book, you're like, oh, this is an interesting choice.
Right?
And it
lot
just
of
makes you
interesting
feel
choices.
very differently about some moments.
And I think
Absolutely.
I think it's worth taking a second to acknowledge that in 2025, media is very fucking different than it was in 2001.
Yeah.
If they had announced that they were going to release a 3.5 hour film in theaters, we'd all be looking at each other like, what the fuck? That's insane.
Yeah.
Who's going to spend that long watching anything?
Didn't we just spend that much time watching like Oppenheimer?
Right, but the
But
point
you
is
have to
that
be at the highest level performance to even try to go after that, too.
But the point is now it's one of those things where it's that fucking joke about like I won't watch a 10-hour film, but fuck yeah, I'll watch 10 1-hour episodes of this series.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and that's where we are today. We're in the 10 1-hour episode arc.
Absolutely.
Now, if they had been able to do that, it'd be a very fucking different experience. So you're getting that
agree.
with Ring of Power, yes? Right?
Yes.
So it feels like for all of the strengths of the movie, it is a movie made for book readers.
Yes.
Because they did a lot of name dropping and even like the names of places. Like, for instance, when they went to Caradhras, the mountain, right? They might have said Caradhras like twice. If you're watching this, what's Caradhras?
Exactly.
You have no idea what that
Exactly.
means. They just drop it in. I have a hard time understanding speech and accents in movies. So I would have just assumed, okay, I didn't know what he said when he said, let's go to the mountain. So whatever he just said, same thing. Those were just words I couldn't understand.
Yeah, because in the movie, I think he says something like, Caradhras is fighting us or something. And I, in my head, was like, who's that guy?
Yeah, right? I didn't even realize what the word was.
I thought it was Saruman. Am I thinking of the wrong person? The white guy, right?
Yeah.
You know, like that's been in my head all the times I watched it, right? That was just such like a thing with so many different scenes in this movie, so many different like I just
Now that you know, you can't unknow it.
yeah.
Right.
So I think that's a really good example of what you guys were talking about. And to steal a point is to how they flattened characters, Laura. That was a huge impression you had of the film.
Yeah.
And part of Middle Earth being a character. And they had to flatten so much stuff. Yeah. But I think one thing they did really well was when they added Arwen and they expanded her entire role in the film.
100%. I mean, you know, as much as I love Glorfindel in the books, he was one of my favorite characters. He was so badass. I think the loss of him was worth Arwen's character increasing.
Yes.
You know, she was one of those characters that I really loved in the book, and I was left wanting more. And she gets talked about all the time. She's in so many memories, but we barely see her. She's a blip. And the fact that, you know, Peter Jackson made her such a large character, and we get to see these moments as book fans that we only get to imagine, I thought was really cool and worth Glorfindel just being taken out.
100%.
Yeah.
Completely
I
agree.
liked
I didn't know I was in love with Liv Tyler either.
Right?
Completely agree.
I thought deleting Glorfindel to add in Arwen gave them a couple extra minutes to like establish more of Arwen's backstory, her relationship with Aragorn. It's like, it's more than hinted at in the book, but I really liked the fact that it got center stage in the movie.
Yeah.
That was beautiful.
I didn't really want to fall in love with Glorfindel, and so I'm glad I fell in love with Arwen.
There you go.
I was going to fall in love with one of the elves. It was mandatory. It's mandatory. They're so beautiful.
Everyone has an elf crush.
They just
They just are emanating love.
And it's way more powerful that a woman saves Frodo in the water versus another strong burly man.
yeah.
I do like that.
Speaking of themes and things that get cut in world building, water is not the enemy in the movie.
Right?
Right? Because when you're a small person traveling, a body of water fucking blows. But in the movie, the water is this barrier, this magic barrier to Rivendell.
Yeah.
And so when they finally cross that barrier, we are introduced to a tremendous point of safety, which is a fun parallel to the ferry. And like, we don't get that there's a whole past with hobbits in the water and all these feelings and emotions. But what we get is a fucking bullet train to Rivendell.
Honestly, that's a perfect way to describe it.
Yeah.
And even just to touch back on Arwen for a second, she says something that I wrote down and I have a note about, which really made me just get my brain going, both about the script writing aspect of the movie and sort of the speaking for Arwen, because we don't really get to hear her POV in the book very much. But she says this line, "What grace has given me, let it pass to him," when Frodo is like dying.
Yeah.
And then that got me thinking, like, I guess that is sort of her version of Glorfindel being like, I'm going to try to save him, and this is all I can do. And it just made me think like motherly.
Yeah.
You know, like she sort of is like a motherly character in that moment. Like she sort of has this like mom grace to her.
Yeah.
Did she not also, in the film at least, give up her immortality as an elf to be with Aragorn?
That's like really, I don't even think touched on.
No.
Really, like if it is, it's implied.
Yeah.
I just think it's really funny that in a lot of ways, Arwen is just like your standard person finding a kitten on the side of the road and being like, "Oh, Frodo, come here, buddy."
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because like
Absolutely.
he's going to live about 25 seconds to her lifetime. So she's like, let me just help this sad little thing.
Absolutely.
And real quick, I'm so glad you brought up that quote because we had just finished, reading The Fellowship. And so all the lines, the moments were really fresh in my mind this time watching it. And it never hit me before that when she says that line, when they even say they're making their boats or their cloaks, they put love into their magic. She's trying to heal him with her elven magic for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
And I love that it comes from a place of love and light.
Yeah.
It just was so fitting and really made me think of that line about how when they create these magic things, they just think about things that they love.
Yeah.
And she's like kind of sacrificing herself. Like if this is the fate to save him, you can have it. It's so
She
giving.
like further drills in the point that he's like a child. Because she cries.
Well, they don't establish
right?
his age in the film.
Yeah.
It's 11.
He just looks like he's a 16-year-old, and you're
Right.
just allowed to believe that the whole time. Some of the changes that they made in the film, I feel like it served to simplify or flatten characters, like Pat said. And the more I'm thinking about this, the more examples are coming to mind. So, for instance, Gandalf. Gandalf is a very complex character. But in the film, they really just sort of simplify him into being like the kind grandfather figure. He doesn't torture Gollum, for instance. He doesn't
Yeah.
set Gollum over a fiery spit. He didn't actually set off the dragon firework that
No.
scared all of the hobbits and brought back Bilbo's PTSD, right? They made Merry and Pippin do that. It struck me as odd originally that he made all of these changes and like little actions got done by somebody else. And I'm like, boy, that's weird. And at the end of the film, I realized it was so that Gandalf never really did anything evil. Merry and Pippin were always the troublemakers. Frodo didn't really make any super terrible decisions like he did in the book.
right?
You know, there's just a lot of examples of things that got changed around, and I think that's why.
And it removes a lot of complexity with
Yeah.
the characters, right?
Makes it easier to follow.
Complex characters have both good and evil in them, and they walk that fine line. And these are not complex characters. These are surrogates for characters in the movie. They basically are
caricatures.
They carry the name, they carry the wardrobe, and they say the lines, but there's not much else to them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They need to be almost like single-sided this early on. I think once we get in the Two Towers and they might start to develop a bit more, but like because there's so much ground to cover in the Fellowship of the Ring, like they're very single-dimensional characters. They're not three-dimensional characters just yet. They still kind of give off the impression that like Frodo's kind of a fucking idiot the entire time.
He doesn't know what's going on, but he doesn't make real stupid choices.
And that really annoyed me that Merry and Pippin were just the scapegoat of every single character's poor choices from the books. Like they took the blame for Frodo messing up at the end. They took the blame for Gandalf, letting out the dragon fireworks, etc.
They're the ones that make the fire at Weathertop and they get yelled at for
it's like
it.
Aragorn.
Yeah.
Like literally any character in the book that made a fuck up, that's now Merry and
them.
Pippin. And the fact that they're always together, they're not really very different characters. I can't remember which one's Pippin, which one's Merry to this day, and I watched the film 1,000 times sometimes. And in the book, Merry is so specifically different, so type A. And I'm like, justice for Merry after watching this.
Yeah, like is there something that one of them brings to the table that the other one doesn't?
No.
Not really. You
They're
can barely
both
tell them
like
apart.
bumbling Abbott Costello fucking.
Yeah. They're kind of a crazy
Pippin's
duo.
the Costello and Mary's the Abbott.
And they're great
the
comedic
straight
relief.
man,
Don't get me wrong. They're hysterical. I love them still. But it's just such a different interpretation of who they are.
Yeah. I prefer them in the movie to the book, to be honest.
Really? Because I was
Really?
thinking like the fact that they delete the entire idea that the hobbits around Frodo have a conspiracy to help him.
Right.
And it becomes entirely accidental. Sam gets literally pulled through a window. He was just eavesdropping. He was just listening in and oops, now he's on an adventure. His cousin, Merry and Pippin are now, oops, we ran into you in a field and now we're being hunted by nightmares. I guess we'll go see elves. Like, they're out for an afternoon and they never go home.
Yeah.
Right.
They end up in Rivendell purely by chance.
Yes.
My question was, when do they even learn about the ring? Is it at the council? No, they weren't at the council of Elrond.
They in the movie they are.
They are. They're all invited.
They come in the end.
They come at the end.
And then Pippin goes,
Where are we
great,
going?
where are we going?
Yeah.
Right?
Did they not even learn about the ring?
Right.
Which was a nice way of sort of giving off like the idiocracy of Pippin's character. I think another thing that's really interesting is we sort of have this like core four, like this core group of four hobbits early on, which sort of changes the dynamic as we're sort of like obviously there's no Buckland, right?
Right.
There's no Fatty Bulger.
There's no Bill Ferny.
There's no Bill Ferny.
No Bill the Pony.
This whole sort of like
I was glad he made it.
yeah, thank God Bill the Pony's in there. But there was this whole aspect in the first act. The world is out to get us and we must stick together. Like emotion that you get from the first act of like the book. The movie's in a 3-act structure. The book is in a 5-act structure. And it's sort of, you lose that. And like I missed feeling like alone in the world. I felt like very quickly it was like we were off on a journey and I don't have any time or room to feel empathy for Frodo's position because suddenly he's got a core group of like loyal friends along for the ride, which in the book, like that's not the case.
And even Sam,
They're just like, oh, you need an escort to like down the road. And he's like in his head thinking like, oh, I got a way longer. I'm going to ditch you at the house. That whole thing's kind of not there. So you lose that, you lose that sense of like anxiety of like, he's got a nuclear bomb in his pocket.
and he has to do it alone.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a much more enjoyable way to do the story if you think about it.
Yeah.
The audience is kind of put at ease, even though when there's scary moments, you know that it's going to be okay.
The scariest thing to happen in the first act is probably just when we meet the Wraith for the first time.
That is terrifying in the film. Terrifying.
It's great. They do a great job with it. I mean, I was watching it as a grown man going, this is scary. Yeah, it was really nice. But that introduces, like, if we're going to talk about all of our good characters, then I think it's important to talk about some of the villains of this book. And the way that they were introduced to us as the audience was different.
Tom
Bombadil. Basically, in the book, there's very, very, very minor exposition of things, and we're sort of meeting our foes as they approach us in real time.
Piecemeal, yeah.
You know, and in the movie, every time they would like foreshadow an enemy before we met the enemy. And it just kept happening. We meet Sauron in the intro with this kind of less than great executed CGI job of him inside of a mountain.
He's fucking rad.
He's less than rad. He's rad in the battle. The battle's awesome. But when he's like, oh, it's like so corny. And I know that was like a scene that was shot that they cut and they didn't want to scrap the whole scene.
Rude.
So they just put it in the prologue. And I get that. But it was like the worst possible way to be introduced to Sauron. Then we have ring wraiths. And instead of our first time meeting a ring wraith, which is that scary scene, and it's still scary, we see them on horses a couple shots before, just enjoying a sunset. They're just
I think that's
sitting
more
around.
terrifying.
But it's introduced that they're servants of the enemy.
Yes.
Whereas in the book, the first time we meet them, we don't know what they are.
Yes. And that's what I'm saying. It was they sort of are dulling the blade before they're stabbing us each time in the movie. But it kind of like knocked the blow down a little bit on each one of them. When we meet Gollum, they do that whole reflective eye thing, which is really cool, but they also do that like hand in the air, and you're like, oh, okay. I kind of wanted to meet this like murderous, creepy creature, and it didn't really come across that way. And then I think my biggest gripe is the Balrog.
Yeah.
The Balrog in the book is so terrifying because you just don't know what's coming. And the way they set up the Balrog in the movie is so badass in Moria, and the lights coming through the pillars, and you're like, what is about to fucking show up? This is terrifying. The only problem is they showed us a picture of the Balrog right before they go into Moria when they're on Caradhras.
Yeah.
And Saruman points at a book and goes, you know what's in those mines, Gandalf. And you're like, oh, so now you just told me there's a big creepy bull-looking demon in the mountain. Like, now you just ruined the surprise. It's kind of like when you're opening a present and you get like one thing open and they're like, it's new shoes.
Or like you see the label.
Yeah, and you're like, I'm not there yet. Can you just fucking shut your mouth for like a minute? I'm gonna be there. Let me get it on my own, you know? And like, I felt like the movie just kept doing that with the villains, which in the books, the villains are so like, you can just grasp them. They're so tangible. They're so terrifying. And so much of the terror in the books is mystery. And they remove the mystery in the movies. They over-explain each, this is a rider that works for Sauron.
Right.
This is a Balrog that lives in the bottom of Moria.
Right.
You're going to go interact with it if you go in there. Like they kind of like ruin the surprise with the villains.
I think they felt like they had to do that. They had to hold the audience's hand because they made it so much shorter.
There was no background.
There was
Right.
no way to add that context without just being like, here it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like they had to hold the audience's hand. And again, having watched it repeatedly, had no fucking idea what was going on for most of the movie. So like it didn't even work.
But I will say, I think the ring wraiths are actually more terrifying in the movie versus the book.
I agree.
But also because they're not supposed to be out in daytime. And so that scene with the sunset was horrifying for someone who had read the books. I was like, oh my God, these ring wraiths can go out in the sun. I'm like, fuck, no time is safe. Run, Frodo, run.
It's funny you bring that up because
I was like, no.
Yeah.
even in the sunlight thing that popped up when Frodo gets stabbed on Weathertop and Aragorn runs up and he grabs the Morgul blade.
Yeah.
In the book, it hits sunlight and it evaporates.
Exactly.
Ain't nobody got time for dawn.
Yeah. And in the movie, he pulls it out and it just is like,
Right.
like in the twilight of night. And so you're kind of like, you lose a little bit there with like, evil things are associated with nighttime,
Right.
and
Which makes it more
not-
terrifying. Like
yeah.
this is like uncontrollable
true.
chaos. So the ring wraiths in the film,
There are no rules.
There are no rules. The rule book
Yeah.
is thrown out the window. They are horrifying in the movie to me. Versus like the Balrog, my imagination created this giant shadow demon, and it was horrific. Like straight out of Dante's Inferno. And this little bull thing that comes in.
It's fucking rad though.
He's
Come
really
on.
cool.
It's like a Pokemon.
He's really cool.
You did not.
But I will say this: your imagination will always be more terrifying because it's
Thank you.
tailored specifically to you, what makes you scared versus anything that you'll see in film. That's why when you read a horror book, it's always scarier than the actual film because you're seeing everything.
Yeah.
You're not able to imagine it and live through it as much because you're watching it. At least in my opinion.
I don't know. The Conjuring scares the fuck out of me every time I watch it.
That's a terrifying film.
It's like those monster
cry.
movies where it's really scary until they show the monster.
like,
Yes.
And then you're like, oh.
Sam.
Yeah, watching someone else's reaction to being terrified is more terrifying. Imagining what they're seeing is horrific. Yeah. But speaking of the last villain you brought up, Gollum, I hate him in the books. No empathy. But the way they made him look in this, his big, cat eyes. He's yelling for fishies, and then he's playing with the ring like his favorite cat toy. I'm like, he's a feral cat, and I'm in love. I would have also adopted him and brought him along. Oh no!
It's a very funny position for that specific character, right? Because again, Gollum is a blood-sucking, cradle-robbing monster that when Gandalf and Aragorn say they tortured, you think,
Good.
Yeah, he deserved that one. That's probably the only way to deal with him. And yeah, in the movie, you're just like, oh, he's got big eyes. And he's
Kind of like a kitty.
He's vaguely threatening and dangerous, much like a cat. And you get this like, it's almost like transformative moment, right? Where they pivot this whole character. You feel the empathy that Gandalf says Bilbo felt. And you're able to get that in a couple of shots. And that encapsulates the entire film, right? They're trying to deliver these intense, complicated, emotional, and thematic messages in as few frames as possible. So while they change the character, and while it's, maybe not the best, I think from a creative choice, it's entirely like not just reasonable, but very well done.
Oh yeah.
They do still hint that he's been tortured, just not by Gandalf.
By the enemy, though.
By the enemy.
Yeah.
Well, they don't
Everyone
hint it, they
stays
show
in
it.
their line.
Yeah.
You hear it.
And they're cranking the thing.
Yeah.
I was really surprised at how they handled the Council of Elrond personally. That whole scene, and when we get to Rivendell, we're moving and grooving. Frodo wakes up, and we just meet Elrond immediately. There's no dinner scene, but they do handle the reconnection with Bilbo really nicely. I really like that. Like, you get a really nice warm feeling with that scene still. The entire time they're in Rivendell is treated completely differently than how the book is. So that whole sequence is just very dreamlike and different, as opposed to feeling like we're in this sort of, as you've often described him, as like a sort of failed warlord, general-esque person. He is kind of coming across as like this like peaceful old man in like a quiet retirement elf center.
Yeah.
As opposed to, what it is in the book. So it's just a completely different treatment.
Did you notice that his face was in that opening historical sequence?
He's there. Yeah, the
he was
character's there.
I thought that was neat.
And that's part of it, right? Because the Council of Elrond and the whole Rivendell scene, we learn everything we need to know before that happens in the movie, right? We learn about where Gandalf's been. Remember, he leaves and then we watch him rifle through pages in Minas Tirith. We see that happen an hour before the movie brings us to Rivendell. The movie opens with the most important information we get out of the Council of Elrond.
Yes.
We already know the 9 are about. We know who and what they are. We know everything the council's meant to impart to us as viewers and readers before we get to that moment. And what that does is that allows us to focus back on that relationship with Frodo and Bilbo and bring us right to Frodo.
Yeah. I did not get the sense of like loss with Rivendell that I got with the book.
Yeah.
Of like, these people are at risk. The ring can't stay here. I sort of just, the most you get is Elrond says, the ring can't stay here to Gandalf. And Gandalf, instead of responding, just goes, and you're like, I guess that's enough to justify the whole fucking reason why it can't. But sure, that's fine.
It feels like a grumpy opinion.
Yeah, I think the bigger thing is just I prefer the movie's version of creating the Fellowship, and Gimli has that great scene where he tries to destroy the ring and it explodes on him. And there's the nice scene where Boromir, we meet Boromir in this scene. Sean Bean, I think his name is.
Yes.
And he picks up where he goes to pick up the ring, which I don't remember happening in the book. But he goes to pick up the ring. He kind of comes across like a clumsy. The night before, when he's looking at Narsil and Aragorn sort of spying on him while he's reading, and he drops the sword, and you're like, you cannot be in charge of delicate things. Like it's a weird like slapstick scene to put in there of like visualizing that he cannot be trusted with important things,
or that he doesn't have nuance.
Yeah,
Right. He's boorish. Boromir.
Ooh.
I like that.
yeah.
But like, there's a lot of things that we get in the movie that we don't get in the book, and there's a fuckload of extremely iconic lines that are invented by the movie.
Yeah.
I wrote as many down as I could think of, like that stood out to me, because I thought that was really funny, because I know these lines just from being alive on the internet today. Right? And so you hear them in the movie and you're like, oh, I'm so excited to read this book. When is this line going to come up?
Never.
Never does.
Never does.
A wizard is never late, nor is he early. He arrives precisely when he means to. That was like in my head, word for word. Never happened in the book.
Yeah.
I don't think he knows about second breakfast. I was waiting for that to happen. That was such a funny, cute little thing. Didn't happen
What
in the
about
book.
11 Seas?
Yeah. Never happened. I was extremely disappointed.
But it was
that
such a
didn't
clever
happen.
way to put the Hobbit lore in without just explaining. You know, I
Yeah.
love that. Yeah.
So good. And then back to Council of Elrond, you have my sword and my bow and my axe. Elrond made all those decisions. Nobody got to volunteer for this job.
Yeah.
And then the one that's already been discussed in the comments a couple of times, you shall not pass. That is like the iconic Gandalf line, not said in the book. It's you cannot pass.
Yeah.
Yeah. Shall's better.
It honestly
I
is.
think it is. I agree. But those were the four that I was waiting to see them in the book, and they never happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that. I mean, I adore Legolas in the movies. And
Good old Orlando Bloom.
He's,
Yeah, I love that he's like besties with Aragorn in this.
he's fine.
Yeah, not Gimli.
No, not yet.
The way that they create the dynamics of Legolas, Gimli, and Aragorn as this sort of like trio, and then there's also Boromir, is a better play than a dwarf, an elf, and two men, which
Yeah.
is how the book sort of lumps them as like the four.
Right.
And in the movie, it's like the 3+1. You know what I mean? As if they're like already, like they just move together, they think together. They're sort of like, you know, you're kind of like, Boromir. What? I don't get the point. He's just like a not as good Aragorn in the movie. In the book, there's so much context to him of like who
So
he is, where he's
much.
from, why he's important,
Why they're butting
what he's
heads.
doing, why is he even there. He's like, I don't even know why I'm here, but I was told to come here. You know.
In the book, we get like a more nuanced approach to Aragorn being this like sort of untested leader. Boromir's a tested leader. Ultimately he fails his tests in the Fellowship, but you get these strengths and weaknesses out of both characters. Whereas in the movie, they're just kind of presented as like the two ways that a man, like capital M man, like humans are in this world. You get humble and thoughtful and Aragorn, and then you get ops for violence at every opportunity, Boromir. And like neither of those are really wrong, but like the characters are boiled down to very simple things.
You know what Boromir doesn't do though? He doesn't blow his horn at every opportunity in the film. I know. It only gets blown once, and I was like, okay, that's a little
It's
disappointing.
just when he's dying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is more powerful. I
That's
understand
true.
why they made
That's
that choice
true.
for a visual thing that you're going to actually hear it versus every couple times like he's just like going off.
This is so funny though.
Well, you brought up something about Boromir that I think is 100% worth talking about when we were watching it, which is Boromir's arc. They changed Boromir's arc in the movie as opposed to Boromir's arc in the books.
Right.
In the books, Boromir starts off kind of good. He's like respectable. He like has good conversations with Aragorn once he kind of gets past being moody, and he slowly transitions to the dark side. In the film, he has a reversing, which is a bad to good arc. They present Boromir as kind of a shithead early on.
Right.
He's bad, clearly negative. He's dressed in dark clothing, and he's just like already conspiring how he can use the ring to do stuff in like the first scene with him. So he's
Yeah.
already in the bad side, and then he works his way into being a really good character, and doing good things. He cares about the hobbits. He's like crying, for Gandalf, who he just met. Let's remember that he just met him.
Yeah.
And
Gandalf is lovable grandpa.
yeah, exactly. And he has like this really this big like upswing where you're like, oh, I was wrong about you.
Yeah,
Right.
he was the one that rescued Frodo from the Watcher in the water instead
Yeah.
of Sam.
Yeah.
He has this
Little
huge
change to make him more valiant.
There's a huge glow up in the film, right? They're like,
yeah.
we're going to make Sean Bean cool.
Yeah.
And they do.
Well,
And-
I think even more with the glow up is that they glow up the emotion of it. I didn't give two rats fucks when he turns on Frodo in the book. Because I didn't like him at this point because he's going good to bad. It's like being upset that the bully bullied somebody.
Yeah, it was more predictable.
Yeah.
You're like, well, duh, of course he did. He's the bully.
Right.
But then when you find out the nerd bullies somebody, the person who's good is doing something, that's different. And so it's heartbreaking in the movie when he turns on Frodo because they did a bad to good arc, And so I trusted him at that point. And that's what made it hurt when he turned on us. It doesn't hurt in the book when he turns.
It's expected.
Yeah. The whole previous chapter is in the boat incanting things into himself and he's losing his mind slowly. You know what I mean? Like it's there's no shock, there's no surprise, there's no whatever. The clearest sign of shock is I think when Frodo insults him in the book and was like, "Oh, I would never like trust men," and that's when he like goes to the next level.
Right.
And that's kind of like the surprise switch, I guess they do in the book. But I think that's a way bigger flip of a switch in the movie, and it's more dramatic and more impactful.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
And like another thing I noticed, when you're thinking about a character in the book versus the movie, is Saruman is sort of lumped up with Sauron this entire film. They're almost interchangeable. They kind of it's always expected if Saruman's in the scene, he's going to be an asshole. He's going to be working for evil. And even with like the mountain with Caradhras, the Caradhras, scene, it comes off in the film like it's Saruman doing that.
Yeah, it really does. And in the book, they kind of, at first, it's questionable, and then it's very much, no, it's just the mountain being an asshole.
Yes.
But in the movie, they make it very obvious that it is Saruman who is causing these snowstorms.
Yeah, he's performing a spell.
Yeah.
And they even show him like, how do I see it about? Like on top of the,
It's a rad
It's awesome.
It is a
scene.
really rad scene.
Yeah.
which is why when I was reading the book and they were like, who is doing this to us? In my head, I was like, ha ha, Saruman.
one.
And they were like, nobody is. And I was like, oh,
Yeah. The world sucks.
what the fuck? That doesn't make sense.
We chose a haunted mountain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was so interesting.
Yeah.
Well, so Saruman is sort of a stand-in for Sauron in the entire film, right? Because we don't see Sauron after scene one. He's not even really referenced very much. Like they don't even really treat him as like the great enemy in the East. It's not like in the book where they're hammering constantly, like there's doom hanging over the world. What we get is this like in-your-face betrayal of Gandalf. We get this evil sorcerer who summons a snowstorm, tries to kill everybody that way, sends some birds out, tries to spy on folks that way, makes an army of orcs and Uruk-hai and sends them out that way.
That are birthed fully grown.
If I was going to
the
grow an
ground. That was
army,
a cool scene. That was a cool scene.
If I was going to grow an army, I would also skip puberty.
It's interesting that they
funny.
quite literally grow an army
Yeah.
from the ground.
And their first action is to like kill.
Yeah.
Like that was,
Yeah.
I think that was an amazing scene. Like
Yeah.
they did so much character building and so they out of fucking nothing, out of a couple of descriptions of Sauron and his impact on Saruman and Saruman's like interest in machines and also the shit that they get into. Like they created this entire visual and thematic and extremely evocative Isengard that we don't get fuck all of in the book.
Yeah.
Those scenes were really neat. That were just totally, I don't know if they're made up, but they were added.
No, they're all based on.
Yeah.
They're based on what we're given, but we're
They
given
didn't
it
happen in the book.
right.
Did you guys go to a lot of theme parks growing up?
Yeah.
Just Six Flags.
Six Flags. So there's a ride called the Crazy Mouse. Did you guys ever go on that?
Where
The
was
Wild
it?
Mouse and
Wild
Hershey.
Mouse, yeah, Wild Mouse. They changed the name of everyone. Big Cheese, whatever it is. And you're in a little thing and you go, and it's like a mini roller coaster. How would you describe it?
Yeah,
You know?
it's like a two-person, kind of looks like a little car, and you are basically doing the trajectory of a mouse. So sometimes you'll shoot forward, You'll stop and go slow, then you go backwards. There's always a part where at one point you go around a curve and it tips sideways, so it feels like you're going to fall out. And you just kind of, are
like
just a
that
mouse.
kid's toy where there's a ball on the wire and you just move it to the other side like that in the doctor's office.
Yeah.
It's you, but you're the
Oh
ball.
my fucking God, right?
Yeah, remember that thing? So that was kind of like what
Yeah.
the crazy mouse was. So those things were popping into my head as we were like seeing in Isengard, like all the sort of like orcs and like
machinery
They're
and-
like, they build like water mills underground and they're like, like digging, and I was like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
The roots are deep, my lord. Like that's such a fucking. It's so cool.
One of my favorite images from the film that wasn't in the book was they were actually in Moria, and the orcs and the goblins start pouring out of the ceiling like ants. And it reminded me of the anthill imagery that Frodo had in his vision, in his dream in the book.
Yeah.
That didn't really get put into the movie except for right there. Like that didn't happen in Moria, but it was so stunning.
The stuff that they hone in on in the movie, they really chose to accentuate things that we don't really get out of the books. And I feel like that's part of the genius of the films, right? Because you can only do so much. They made a choice to be very true to the material throughout, but they still found ways to introduce things to us in ways that Tolkien had not in the original works.
Absolutely. I mean, even such a simple thing as like changing when we learn information.
Yeah.
A perfect example is when they're in Moria and the scene from chapter 2 takes place where Gandalf is explaining to Frodo the task and what we must do with the time we're given, and that whole whole sort of dialogue between the two of them comes up an hour and 50 minutes into the movie. You know what I mean? And you're like, oh, well, that would have been kind of encouraging words at the start of this, buddy. You know what I mean? But like, they approached it differently anyway. So, but yeah, they do that quite a bit where like, oh, there's that thing from that other chapter that just randomly appeared in this chapter, or this scene, I should say.
It's wild to me too that they reduced all of Lothlorien to what, like maybe 8 or 10 minutes?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
because you were saying they don't really explain why they go there, and then once you get there, it's just kind of like Boromir has an oh no moment. There's a lot of cool music. We get some very amazing visuals. Haldir shows up, and then we're introduced to Celeborn and Galadriel. They explain Gandalf is dead, and there's
Then
like
Galadriel gets weird.
and Galadriel gets weird, and then there's a mirror, and then bye boys. Like it's not like they skip the gift giving.
They gave it to him.
That's where the hobbits get their daggers.
They montage the gift giving, just to be fair. They don't treat it as a full scene. They just do the hobbits and they move on.
It's bullshit. It's so important though.
Yeah, Boromir doesn't even get a shitty belt.
She goes up to Aragorn to give him the thing, and
belt.
she goes, "You already have it." And you're like, "What?"
Everything's abbreviated, which is funny because that's a place where time doesn't really flow normally. So that to me makes a fuckload of sense.
Yeah.
But we don't get that.
Yeah.
And like we spent almost an entire chapter mourning the impending loss of Lorien and the magic that'll be there. And I feel like it was reduced to one line when Galadriel does her weird I'm a crazy witch thing. And she comes back down and she says, I passed the test and will fade. That's the only reference that's made to like elves will fade away no matter what happens. And like that made no sense to me at the time.
Yeah, and the way she's
Absolutely.
introduced and the way she behaves, you're not really sad. You're like, okay, crazy lady, bye-bye. And it's just so disheartening to say because I adore her.
Something that did not translate well to the film, and I've always been sad about it, is that Tolkien's very fucking funny. He's very, very funny. But even the scene where like Gimli pours his heart out, and then everyone's like, oh, okay, this is, she's married, man. Galadriel's married. Like stuff like that. Or like we have tons of these like very tongue-in-cheek moments, and we don't really get any of them in the movie. Instead, we get don't toss the dwarf. And it's like, okay, like it's
No one tosses a dwarf. And then he jumps and you got to grab his beard.
right.
Yeah.
Right. Or Merry and Pippin. And it's like they are the proxy for all of the clever humor. And it's just kind of like, no, we're going to hit him with apples.
Right. Yeah. They're so witty in the book, especially Mary. And in this, he's just like a bumbling idiot. He's just like the slapstick humor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's not something I'm super salty about. It's just like, it's something that I wish translated better, and it's why I encourage people who are a fan of the material to read the books.
Well, I wouldn't describe the books as comical.
No.
I would describe
Witty.
them as having witty humor peppered in every couple chapters. I would describe the Fellowship of the Ring as being slightly comical at times.
Yes.
You know, like they're just straight up like out of like a Disney Pirates of the Caribbean feel, like something's
Little
like
gags.
knock somebody and they're like, whoa, and they like fall down instead of it being like a serious thing.
Like
you
when
know?
Sam hits an orc with a frying pan instead of gutting him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny because in the books, everybody has like a health meter. In the movies, everyone is immortal until they die. You know, there's no like getting hurt along the way, you know?
Right, because Gandalf has that whole thing where he's resting on the stairs. None of that happened.
None of that
Yep.
happens. Sam isn't bleeding from his head. Frodo is just sort of like always fine.
Except when he's not.
Except, you know what I mean? It's like you're either like at 100% health or like about to die or dying.
Yeah.
So there's no like in between, which I guess makes it bigger stakes, you know, in the movie.
Yeah, because you don't know what's going to happen.
Because there's no like recovery time. Even Boromir's like, give him a second. And you're like, I don't know. Do they need it?
Yeah.
That's so funny.
You haven't set up the characters enough for me to be really that upset, you know, that things have happened this way. So
I think they could have killed one or two hobbits, and it would have been like, oh.
it would have been fine.
Nobody would have known the difference.
Yeah. I think there is a little bit of wit, and I think they tend to give the wit to Aragorn. But there's a scene where Aragorn is leading them to Rivendell, and there's Merry is talking to Frodo, and they're like, "Where are we going? And what are we doing?" And then Sam, sort of in the back, is like, "Can we even like trust this guy?" You know. And it kind of shows like a hint that Aragorn's like super hearing his senses because
Yeah.
he's like 35, 40 feet away from them. And he responds and he's like, "We're heading to Rivendell, to the elves, Master Gamgee."
Yes.
Which is two things. One, it's like a witty, smart thing. And you're like, oh shit, he heard them. So
Right.
yeah, like, as a viewer, you're like, does this guy have like super senses or something?
Right.
But then also, I thought it was really interesting the way he acknowledged him as Master Gamgee, sort of the, you know, for lack of a better term, sort of hired help, you know.
I think it's very tongue-in-cheek.
Yeah, it's like he's still like giving these hobbits respect, even though he has no reason to, because he's like a good-hearted person.
But in the film, Sam is already one of Frodo's friends.
Yeah,
So that's a little different
a huge
too.
change. too.
Yeah.
That's a huge change.
Totally changes their character relationship.
Yeah, they're already really close before they even go on the journey together.
Yeah.
But all that being said, doesn't mean we didn't like the film.
Oh, it was amazing.
Still
We're just
absolutely
pointing
love
out
it.
all the differences. But I think the film was still a gorgeous work of art.
I think it's impossible not to view the film and wish there had been more. Right?
Yeah.
Because like it does the things that the film does, a book cannot do.
Right.
The musical score, the visuals, giving us these characters and these lines and these deliveries. It's in a way that really builds the world. And you can read a book at a surface level and understand what happened. But you can watch a film like this and feel what happened. And even if it's like a bullet train, breakneck speed, like we're getting the tip of the iceberg the whole time. Like you get these moments where like you have a giggle, like when one of the hobbits take an apple to the face. You have a moment where like, oh Jesus, when the Balrog appears, even if you already know what it's like and it doesn't compare to the way the book presents it. When the Nazgul show up, you're like, oh fuck, that's a real bad dude. When the music swells, when these very interesting and iconic things happen that can only be achieved through film, you can really appreciate that they tried and succeeded to make a very, very, very good fucking movie out of a very fucking good book.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good analysis for the movie versus the book. Obviously, there are a billion actual differences. Like, you know, if you want to go bullet by bullet by bullet of like, well, this was different and that was better and this was worse and whatever. You can make your own judgment. Recommend you do that. We watched the extended version. Perhaps a theatrical will be a different. Yeah, I might have a different complete experience with that one. I don't know. But I do recommend that anybody who's interested to go watch it and give it a comparison of your own, because it's pretty wild. If you go from the book into the movie, you're sort of like, you love it and you're disappointed, but you're also like ecstatic at the same time because it's new and oh man,
you get to see everything you were imagining.
It, but it's like it can only be so much, right? It can't be every single thing that happens in the book, isn't it?
Beagle.
And it's just so fun. I mean, is it even possible to have a food for thought with this?
Sort of. So I didn't really go all out with this one, but since we spent 4 hours watching a movie, I thought we could wrap up with some popcorn.
It's the way to do it.
Yep.
Get a little
Fresh
movie popcorn.
popcorn.
I
So
love
this
it.
really makes me feel like a hobbit, just enjoying our little food at the end of the night.
Oh yes. Speaking of hobbits, I was thinking when we were discussing, like, the book takes a little bit for me to buy into the world.
The world of the hobbits?
The world of Middle Earth. The way that Tolkien writes it, there's a lot of context and lore and world building and this and that. And it's all very good, but it does make it feel like hobbits are this teeny tiny little thing on a much bigger plan, a much bigger world that we're a part of. I would much rather have this movie start with just the hobbits, because I do believe the way Peter Jackson handles the whole introduction to this film in the time that we spend in Hobbiton is so perfect.
Yeah.
It's so perfect.
So lively.
It's full of life. It's full of mystery, mischief, romance, playfulness, love, loss, storytelling, evil. We get this whole myriad of emotions, and also we get some comedy too, right? We have Merry and Pippin sort of setting off, which is, it's nice. I'm so thankful that Merry and Pippin are introduced early on in the movie.
Yeah.
Because as cool as it is that they're introduced the way they are in the book, they're too good to not be on screen. When they're together, when they're in the Hobbits, like, I just enjoy them. So there's so much, like, as I'm watching this intro scene, there's joy flowing through my body with a smile on my face as I'm watching this.
It is really fun.
I don't have that feeling when I'm reading it. I'm like, this is interesting. It's a kind of emo. Frodo's wandering off, and in the book, when they talk about everybody getting drunk with the wheelbarrows, that's awesome. I love that they kind of showed that the hobbits in the movie were like kind of disgusting sometimes, or the earwax guy.
But he just took my heart in that moment. That whole group of people in that land, I'm all in. I'm rooting for them. I'm invested in this film because of this Hobbiton.
It feels like a block party. It's meant to feel like a party you have attended at one point in your life.
That scene really takes your heart. Yeah.
When we meet Bilbo Baggins, it starts on a really nice Steadicam sort of dolly shot that sort of moves through Bag End, through the tunnels, and it kind of cranes up and looks down at this book that this hobbit is writing, and you see from behind, and he's writing, what's it, On Hobbits?
Concerning
Or
Hobbits.
Concerning Hobbits is the name of it, which he's writing the book prologue.
Yeah.
I loved that so much.
Such a nice Easter egg for the
What a
readers.
cool thing that, like, if I didn't read the book, I never would have known. But the funny thing is, I also didn't read the prologue.
God damn it.
One day you will.
So I got the joke, but I didn't know what the joke was.
Well, he started,
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Chris, he started saying it out loud in a less dry way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, if he could have read the whole prologue to me, I might have listened. Was it word for word?
No.
It started word for word.
It starts word for word.
But I don't
though.
think it.
Yeah.
I love that that's what you clock about the film is that the hobbits become immediately endearing, because in the book I feel like they're immediately relatable.
Yeah.
Like there's lots of like little like eye rolling, oh god, these neighbors of mine, these people, all this stuff, but they're all very like human, lowercase h, like our world, like emotions. Like you know the people in your neighborhood that you work with and you live with, your relationships with them, with your relatives, and you're very like, as much as you love them, there's a whole lot of forbearance. There's a lot of
Nobody's magical.
Right.
royal.
Yeah.
But in the movie, it's just like it's immediately all of these jolly, adorable little creatures. Like Bilbo telling his scary stories to the kids.
One of my favorite parts.
Fucking amazing.
Another Easter egg to The Hobbit. I mean, and then you just fall in love with Bilbo in that moment. Yeah.
Or the guy that makes the face,
Yeah.
Squinty face.
like the fat guy,
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
when Gandalf goes by or whatever.
Well, first he's laughing, then his wife hits him, and then he makes the face.
Yeah.
That guy's great.
Yeah.
Give him $1 million. I love him.
I think my favorite part of the films is honestly the Nazgul, the depictions of the Nazgul. Because everything from the vocalizations to the presentation of them on camera to the way they move and they sound and the way they're used is fucking amazing. They're terrifying in the books, but because you don't know what you're getting into, in the movies, they're just fucking terrifying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's done so well.
Yeah, absolutely. I still think my favorite scene is the same as my chapter.
Tom Bombadil?
No, that was hers.
I don't think so.
Bree.
He's also not in the movie. Yep, Bree. Yes.
Bree. And I'm not sure if that was Butterbur. It might have been Butterbur that they sort of were. They
Yeah,
didn't-
the big
they-
mustache.
They didn't name him.
Yeah.
But he wasn't bald.
Well,
But
Yeah.
you know, I'm assuming that was Butterbur.
the movie's a kinder adaptation.
Is it though? Because they smushed Harry the gate guard with a gate.
Yes,
They do
So,
kill him immediately.
from when we enter,
Squish.
from when we get there, and they come up and they knock and they have the little hobbit door that opens and we meet Harry and he's like, "What are you doing?" And you know, like that moment on, it's now like clandestine. We're just coming off of the big slow motion jump onto the ferry. I've never been more into a scene, into a movie than in that moment. When we're like arriving at the big folk town and you see the glint in Strider's eyes in the
Yeah.
corner smoking the pipe. And we have the whole sequence with Frodo Baggins. I know a Baggins. And Pippin is like, oh, he's right there.
That's my cousin.
My cousin's he's twice removed. And like it's just perfectly delivered. The fall is there's not he doesn't do the jig, but he falls and the ring. Oh, it's so perfect. The Nazgul become dangerous. The Nazgul are imminent and terrifying prior to this, but they're not dangerous. They don't really.
So they kill Harry.
Yeah, the only time you really get the sense that they might be dangerous is when they're riding past and there's like a shot of like a sword coming down or something, and you're sort of like, all right, it's like implied danger.
They're capable of violence.
Yes, capable of violent and being violent are very different.
Laura is a good example.
Yeah. And so you know the Nazgul are capable of violence. They're terrifying. They're imminent and dark. And, you know, when they get to the hotel room in Bree and they have this beautiful scene where they all just raise their swords and start stabbing violently. And that's when, for the first time in the movie, you see what they would do if they caught the hobbits.
That was a great
And
scene.
that is terrifying. Yeah, and you just feel like, I don't know if I should trust this Strider guy. You know, even Tom Bombadil, you're sort of like, I just don't trust him. You know, I don't even know if I want to trust him. I just don't trust him. But Strider, something about him is something, and that might just be the casting with Viggo Mortensen. But
probably.
like, you know, you're just sort of like, oh, I like this guy. I don't know if I should like this guy, but I like this guy, you know?
They do such a very good job of creating all that emotion that hobbits have, where like it's a big scary world, and you get that in the Old Forest and the Barrow Downs, and even Tom Bombadil's terrifying, and you get all this stuff and all these, like, we learn all these lessons as a reader over 100 pages.
Yeah.
And the film condenses it to a like 4-shot montage of laughing drunks. Right? Is that not like, you're just like, oh fuck.
Yeah. And they trade Bill Ferny. The scene with Bill Ferny that happens when they're leaving Bree is traded for Aragorn and Pippin's interaction together. When he's like, "Oh, I'm hungry," and Aragorn's like, "No, what about second breakfast?" And instead of Sam throwing an apple at Bill Ferny, Aragorn throws an apple at Pippin.
That's so
and
good.
hits him in the head. And it's like, oh, it works on its own if you've never read the book, but if you've read the book, you're like, you're doing the apple bit, got it. But
Right.
it's you throwing it at Pippin because Aragorn's attacking Pippin.
Yes.
Instead of Sam attacking Bill Ferny, which is a fun little thing.
My note said, "There's no Bill Ferny, but his apple makes an appearance."
I love that.
It's like a nice nod. Same with Farmer Maggot, right? I mean, this is not the
yeah.
pre-scene, but like a shortcut to mushrooms. Like they say in the chapter title, and you're like,
Yeah,
Little Easter eggs.
Yeah, I love that you guys are having these revelations and enjoying these moments because, like, to me, that is again the most rewarding part of sharing this stuff because it's great source material. It's a great adaptation. It's so much fun. But Chris, I disagree so fucking hard about that opening sequence.
You don't like it
I love it
in the movie?
in the movie.
What do you mean? Oh, you like the
I
opening
fucking
sequence, not the
love
Shire,
it.
right?
No, yeah.
The exposition dump.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
that's the worst part of the entire
I
film.
would have watched
I'm
an
glad you
entire...
said that because I
It's
agree.
the absolute worst part of the entire film.
I'm willing to be wrong, but I know I'm not.
I just feel like Sauron comes off as hokey because he's wearing this clanky medieval armor and he's like slow mo, like he just feels like a 1930s King Kong, and like this little lowly man is like and he just like shrivels and is like you know what I mean? It's like, and after the prologue where Galadriel says, "And the hearts of men are easily corrupted; they're so weak." Well, they're so weak they smite Sauron. Which I know is the point, but it's also like, I don't know. I felt like he could have been a little more menacing.
Yeah.
So I understand that, but overall, I think it's important to have that scene as well.
I don't. I think Star Wars did it better.
the text, the
Oh my
scrolling
God.
text.
If you feel so compelled that your story does not stand strong enough on its own two legs that it requires an exposition in the beginning, which is the lowest form of cinema. The lowest form of cinema.
Pat's face.
Yikes.
Dude, as a filmmaker, nothing gets my blood boiling more than a movie that starts off with an explanation of why we're watching this movie. That fucking drives me nuts. But some movies do it better than others, and they do it gracefully, right? Some movies do it worse. Star Wars, probably the best possible way, most iconic of all movies ever to do it, with just going, read the text. Just putting it up. We're going to do it the same way every time. That's what you need to know. We don't got time to waste getting started on the movie. Everything that happened in this intro scene is re-explained later on.
But now you have context.
The important thing with that scene is that they immediately establish what the stakes are. This is world building shit. Like, this is Satan on Earth has a magic ring. They fucked him up. They fixed it. Oops, they didn't fix it. That tells us immediately what's going to happen if Frodo fails, right?
But from
I disagree completely.
From my perspective, it's this like quiet, whispered introduction. And like, I just immediately zone out. I don't know. Was it the same for you, or did you just hate
It's
the whole
boring.
thing?
It's very boring.
Always
I
zone
think,
out during
I think
that
it
part.
actually reduces the stakes
Oh.
because they show us how easily defeatable he is. Just cut his hand off. That's it. And you beat him. He just blows up. Two, they don't show.
All right.
Two, I'm not wrong.
I said all right.
Turns to ash, yeah.
Two, they do such a disservice to the actual terror that Sauron is. They don't show him commanding these crazy amounts of forces. Those guys, those orcs that are fighting them, doing it on their own. They're not being commanded by him like he's some big warlord. Then we meet him, and he's just a big baddie. And Lord of the Rings has several big baddies, and they're scary. But the Balrog in the movie, a billion times more powerful and scary looking than Sauron. I'm not scared of Sauron because I watched the intro scene. I know how to beat him. You're showing me the monster, and now I'm not scared of the monster.
And they don't really establish how he's growing stronger.
Yeah. Why do I care about this guy? They're like, he's going to come back. I'm like, great. Get a big sword. Cut his hand off. Problem solved. If you can't get close to him, get an arrow. Get one of these fucking elves who can shoot an arrow a mile and right through his finger. We know how to beat him at this point. So I think that's a major flaw.
But that's not the message, right? The message is that they defeated him. They took the ring from him, yet he persists.
Yeah.
So they have to destroy the ring. And I agree that the movie changes the focus from we must destroy the ring to defeat Sauron to Sauron's going to kill everyone on Earth unless we can defeat him. And oops, there's only one way. And they don't explain the stakes on that because, frankly, they don't have time in the film.
Yeah.
you know how long it would take to establish those emotional stakes? Like we would not have gotten to, we would have gotten to Bree in 4 hours.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that they might have a little more time to establish the stakes if they didn't put that scene in.
I'm not a filmmaker. I'm just a nerd. I love it.
Well, Laura, I want to hear your favorite moment.
Oh, my favorite moment. I think I have two. One is from what was in my mind before. So the scene where Arwen is riding Frodo to the ford of Bruinen.
Oh, that's so good.
That was stuck in my head from the previous times I had seen it. So it was really nice to see it again. But the second time around, the orcs and goblins crawling out of the ceiling like ants was just really striking, and that stuck with me a lot.
Yeah. I also love the river scene. And then I have like two very quick moments that are tied for number one. One is like the first time the Dark Riders get close to Frodo, and he leans and he's sniffing over the tree, and all the living creatures in the earth are running from them.
Oh, I didn't
that
notice
to me
that.
is
Centipedes
terrifying.
and-
It's like centipedes and spiders. It's like this dark evil touches the earth, and everything that's alive in the earth is repelled by it. And that to me is such a striking visual and teaches me so much about what they are.
Yeah.
And that's not in the book at all. I love that. It's one of my favorite parts of the movie. It's like seared into my mind. And then also when Gandalf is on the top of the tower and he's whispering to the moth, and then the eagle comes, it's like, ah! And it just like flies off. Like, that's so perfect. And we really don't get to visualize that in the book much because he's trying not to excite a healing Frodo. It gives him very like small breadcrumbs. And then even at the council, he's very quick with it.
It's probably the first time ever in a movie you have seen somebody snatch a butterfly out of the air in such an iconic way, too.
And whisper like
Or a moth.
another
It's not a
language.
butterfly,
Yeah,
a
it's
moth. But he grabs it like
Yeah.
that, which you think you would
Yeah.
like grab.
Right.
And then right in the mouth.
Oh, no, and then, and then its wing just falls off. No, he grabs its wing. There's like, fuck.
But like the way he just like,
Those are like tied for my top two favorite moments of the movie because they're not in the books at all, but they're based on things from the book, and it just expanded and colored it in a way that's so special, and it's just so great. They did an excellent job.
and the ring wraith in that moment when they're hiding under the tree stump, and the ring wraith's horse has like bloody nails coming
And it's
out
like
of its
foaming at the
hooves
mouth
and
and
stuff.
red eyes.
Yeah, it was like it felt
Very
like
cool.
an evil creature, which that was different than how the book described it. So I appreciated Peter Jackson's artistic expression with that.
Like Weathertop was super cool, but like not like
It didn't
not
carry the
ex-
same
Not
level.
cool enough.
Yeah,
Again.
Aragorn was cooler in the movie, but the scene was better in the book.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I just but again, when I see the ring wraith in my mind, no matter what's happening, whenever I see one of those images like the black hoods and everything, I hear the scream,
yes.
right? That like
Yes.
hunting scream. It's so good.
Yeah.
I wish that Aragorn in the book threw the fire
Yeah.
into
Yeah.
the face of the one, which is cool. But this is the first time I noticed all the masks. Did you notice the black masks that the ring wraiths all were wearing?
Yeah.
So
wore
they always had hoods on, obviously. But this was the first time where I saw like, oh, they have like black masks on, but just purely from a film costume point of view. Obviously, not the characters have masks, but like, I was like, oh, I can like. We're watching it in 4K. You could really see what they filmed, but they're still badass, man. They're still really cool.
Yeah.
I liked Grandpa Fight.
Oh my god.
That's
Wizards.
that weird, like trippy,
It was so weird.
backwards, upside down spin he
He
does.
feels like a clock
so what we're-
getting spun around backwards.
What we're talking about is in the movie, Gandalf and Saruman, at the moment that Saruman betrays or reveals his betrayal to Gandalf, they have a fight. And Gandalf kind of alludes in the book to like, it didn't go well. I ended up trapped on a tower. So our Saruman's really powerful. In the movie, though,
It's Grandpa Fight. It's just two grandpas fighting one another with
That's what I was just gonna do. I was like, when I think of that scene, I just hear the "Ooh,
Just whipping each other around with spells.
I feel like was that their audition? Like grunt your emotions, but you have no dialogue. And now you're saying this because they express so much with their grunts.
Yeah.
I don't think either of those guys auditioned for this movie.
No, I'm not saying that. I was trying to make a joke. Like, how would you cast someone besides like them being famous and amazing? How would you cast someone to pull that off? Be like, here's a dialogue: grunt,
Yeah.
stick, grunt, stick. Like I'm just visualizing that. It's so funny.
how would Sean Connery have done that scene?
Oh my god.
'Cause he was He would have pulled a gun.
No. You shall not pass.
Oh no.
Yeah.
You shall not.
Wait,
You shan't.
I never remember his name. Who's the guy in Cowbell?
Will Ferrell?
No.
Christopher Walken?
Christopher Walken.
Oh my God. Christopher Walken.
Could you imagine him as Gandalf?
You're not gonna pass.
Frodo, you must destroy the
Fly.
ring.
It's like fly, you fools, from him.
Fly. You fools.
Yeah.
My God.
Yeah, fly you. Fools.
I want to see that.
Yeah, that'd
Maybe
be
his
good.
next
That
NSL gig.
Or if he was Frodo.
All right, SNL. I'm dyslexic tonight. I'm so
He's just
tired.
like, I'll take it. I don't know the way.
That might be the best yet.
Who knows? This is fucking nuts.
But this has been so much fun.
We just get stabbed by the cave troll. Ooh.
Why do that to me? I'm going to stop with a terrible Christopher Walken impression.
I hear
Every
it.
I'm
Christopher-
not an
no, it's
impression guy.
perfect. It's amazing.
I'm an accents guy, not an impressions guy. That's a wrap on this episode of Full of It Took. This is a fun little bonus episode we decided to include for the premiere of season 2. I'm assuming at this point, if you have already watched this episode or listened to this episode, that you have read or listened to episode 1 of season 2, which is the departure of Boromir. If you haven't, it's okay. I'm sorry if we spoiled a couple things. Maybe not. I just enjoyed talking about it myself. I would say you're doing a disservice to yourself if you don't watch the movies after reading the book. My gosh, this is the only way I want to do it now moving forward. I can't wait to read the next book, Two Towers, and then watch the movie, read The Return of the King, and watch Return of the King.
We've done it.
This
Yeah.
makes me very happy.
I'm excited about
Yeah.
it. I'm here for it. Overall, we'll go down the line. What rating would you give the film? I think I would give The Fellowship of the Ring a 10 out of 10.
Wow. I would only give it a 9 out of 10.
9 out of 10.
Yeah, just because there was so much I missed. Doesn't stand alone as well.
9.5. I'm changing mine to 9.5.
Yeah, I was going to say 9.5. Like, it's almost perfect. It's such a great adaptation, a masterpiece, but there's like a half point for a couple things.
All right, now I'm at a 9.
Oh my God.
Ooh.
NC-17.
You going to read it?
Oh, 11. 11 out of 10. 11 out of 10.
That good, huh?
So,
What are you
okay.
going to give Two Towers? 42 out of 10?
Two Towers, I'd give a 50 out of 10. It's my favorite
My girl
movie.
It's my favorite. I love the Two Towers.
Yeah.
That's why I dropped
Room
mine
for
to a 9
improvement.
because I know I like the Two Towers better.
Oh, I'm going above 10 for that.
So,
You can't go above 10. That's
I'm
how
doing
the
it.
rating system
There are no
works.
rules. We threw them out at the
Yeah.
beginning of this.
There's no rules?
There's no structure.
no rules.
All right.
I give it 5 out of 6 Sams. I don't know. Like,
5 out of 6
Oh my God, 9.5 ring wraiths. That's my final score.
9 rates out of 9. Done.
Oh my God. 6 Pippin cocks. What?
What?
That took a turn.
What?
And no, really, you know, now I got nothing for you. Fuck it. You can have that one. I don't.
What'd you say? What's in your mouth?
I said, how many does he have?
Oh, I thought you said, what's in your mouth? I was like, whoa. What the fuck?
Things you can say to the cat and not Chris. You're so soft.
Oh, God. Anyway, thanks so much for tuning in for Full of a Took. I hope you enjoyed this episode, this bonus episode. Now back to your regular programming. Season 2 begins today. I hope you really enjoyed season 1, and I really hope you enjoy season 2 of Full of a Took podcast.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah.
It's going to be a fun one.
We'll see you guys at the Two Towers.
Bye.